what is your biggest hot take for the go-to-market landscape at the moment?
The best SDRs are really good at this because they're like, that messaging didn't work. That wasn't the right persona. That outreach channel didn't work. They always try new things.
I'm wondering, how did you guys manage to build your go-to-market engine without those signals built in within your platform? How did you grow?
We have an external GTM engineering team, which we're really the only company that has that because we sell basically GTM engineering software.
Do you think it's better to hire a GTM engineer as a brand new role within your company or up your SDR to a GTM?
It's a very interesting counter trend that people have a belief that the SDR role is going away. But actually, if you look at some of the companies that have been building highly automated systems, they're going more in the favor of introducing more SDRs and then surrounding them with automation.
Welcome everyone to My First Signal, the only show where we invite seasoned revenue leaders to discover the practical side of designing a signal-based go-to-market engine in 30 minutes. My name is Georgi and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Signal-Based. Now let's get practical. Ladies and gentlemen, another week, another legendary guest on the show. Everett, I'm absolutely flattered by the fact that you even have 30 minutes to chat with me today. So appreciate you for coming.
Hey man, it's great to be here. It's a really kind of pertinent topic, right? We basically help customers do this day in, day out. So very happy to chat through this and talk about even what we're doing at Clay as well. And appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, no worries. The pleasure is mine once again. And there's a ton to talk about. MCPs, how to ultimately adopt the whole methodology, how to build a team. But why don't we start with a fan favorite, which is, what is your biggest hot take for the go-to-market landscape at the moment?
Pre-built rep interfaces are going to need to change. I think actually most companies are going to want to build like a lovable style rep interface and completely customize the UIs their reps use. And that companies that offer rep interfaces are going to need to support that, I think. And the era of everybody has the same to-do list view in their different sequencing tools is, I think, coming to an end.
Awesome. Do you mind elaborating a little bit more? What do you see in Clay when it comes to this and the own usage of your own teams and also, the rest of the clients that you guys, of course, support?
Yeah, so in Clay, we basically use Slack and Retool as our rep interfaces. So we have, for example, a custom Retool app that helps us power our event invites. We've been doing a lot this year on doing like in-person events, and our GTMEs can use that app to actually select who to invite to do things like send a message to that person from one of our co-founders via LinkedIn or via email and trigger it from this Retool app that basically is like a front end for Clay. We also use Slack very heavily. So we have these Slack apps. We also have like Copilot channels for all of our GTMEs that they get pings in those channels. They get daily digests and call prep and follow-up actions. And we have a human in the loop Slack workflow in all of those channels where people can trigger like Salesforce stage updates and things like that. None of that is like pre-built, right? That's all kind of custom built stuff. And obviously we have an amazing GTM engineering team at Clay and they are insane, but I think more companies will begin to do things like this, and many already are. Many companies I talk to already have custom interfaces alongside their other tools, and I think that will just continue.
Yeah, sweet. And when you mentioned, by the way, GTM team formation, just to throw a little bit of an insight from one of the previous episodes that we recorded with Ilya from Hayreach, what he mentioned is that his GTM team goes into two parts. So we have GTM technicians and GTM engineers as strategists. How do you go with that one? What's Clay's way of building a GTM engineering team?
Love Hayreach, by the way. I'll have to check that episode out. But we have the same thing. We have an external GTM engineering team, which we're really the only company that has that because we sell basically GTM engineering software. But we go into other customers and help them build things out in Clay, design, scope, evaluate, check their data. Like it's a pretty technical kind of experience to buy from Clay, at least to buy from my team. We also have a self-serve motion. And so a lot of us are former ops and growth people. For example, I have an engineering background and then I did growth marketing for 4 years and was a Clay customer actually before I joined the company. So there's a lot of us that are part of our external GTM engineering team. And then we have an internal GTM engineering team, which is the team that everybody else has, which are the people that they're a part of the ops org and they build these automated systems that generate pipeline and they take care of our data and they built all the the rep interface stuff that I just described. And that's the team that everybody else has, every other company is trying to create. And then we get a lot of ideas from them. So stuff that they build, I show customers and I'm like, hey, do you like this? And then they're like, yes. And I'm like, okay, it's like sell you this and stuff like that. It's a pretty fun flywheel that we've got going.
Hot take, by the way. Do you think it's better to hire a GTM engineer as a brand new role within your company or up your SDR to a GTM?
Yeah, I actually really favor the SDR up level. And we have several of the GTM engineers at my company. They have engineering degrees like from Michigan, and then they like did the SDR role for a while, or they were a consultant or something like that. And I think those people are absolutely awesome because there's one part of GTM engineering that a lot of people just overlook a little, which is the iteration and experimentation of it. And so the best SDRs are really good at this because they're like, that messaging didn't work. That wasn't the right persona. That outreach channel didn't work. They always try new things. And the best SDRs I've found are like pretty innovative. And you go to events and talk to them. And I talk to our own. We now have these Clay DRs that we have. And you hear these just super creative like stories and outreach methodologies. And that is one of the core pieces of being a really good GTM engineer as well. So there's more overlap in those roles than you might expect. And you shouldn't over-index on the engineering part of it too much, I would say.
Awesome. Sweet. Okay. A side way through it, because it is a brand new thing that you guys introduced for the first time to have SDRs in Clay. How is it different from everything else that it's out there, I would say, and your GTM team?
I think we're going to do a big education around this and stuff, but it's a very interesting counter trend that people have a belief that the SDR role is going away. But actually, if you look at some of the companies that have been building highly automated systems, Ramp called this out publicly, but there are others. They're actually going more in the favor of introducing more SDRs and then surrounding them with automation. And we are doing the same. So there is an element of super creative, high touch outreach that goes way beyond sending emails and phones. I think the SDR role of just hammering emails and phones, that is going away / already dead in many cases. But the creative human element of getting in touch with someone and building a case and researching the company or using AI generated research and picking the right bits out of that, I see that role actually being hired for. And in fact, I just saw a job posting from OpenAI for SDRs for EMEA. I do advise people not to buy too much into some of the narratives that they see. When you look at the things that people are actually doing, there's just an evolution of a lot of these roles versus a situation where folks are going away. I do think that also the era of we need this much pipeline, therefore we're going to hire this many SDRs. That era is over as well. And that ratio, the thing of we have a 2-to-1 AE to SDR ratio, all that stuff, because those ratios are based off of a very prescriptive, you need to reach out to this many contacts per day, et cetera, type thing. And those types of activities are the ones that have been taken over by AI. But a really great SDR that generates $1 million opportunity for one seller, like those folks are fine.
I love it. And this also confirms the hypothesis, or at least a statement from Frank Saunders in episode number 2, by the way. So for people that have not checked this thing out, go watch that episode. Cool, Everett. Why don't we just dive in a little bit deeper now? Obviously, you guys introduced signals last year or something.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, how did you guys manage to build your go-to-market engine without those signals built within your platform? Like, how did you guys do it? How did you grow?
Yeah. So it was always possible to build very interesting signals in Clay. And the most interesting signals in Clay are what we call custom signals, where, for example, you have an agent go to a website and check for some update, or you're monitoring like an RSS feed, or I'm trying to think of another, like you're doing interesting things on social networks. It was always possible to cobble something together. So you might, for example, use a different social listening tool, pipe it into Clay. A very popular flow for a long time still was like our B2B to Clay, where you would have our B2B do the website, DN send that to Clay. For example, when I was a Clay customer before, I'm using Unify to DN on our website, sending that to Clay. So that always was possible. What we've done with Signals, though, is introduce native versions of this into Clay. And we've also done this with the sequencer recently, too. And what I always tell people is it doesn't mean that you have to do it in Clay. You can still use other systems and tools that you like and pipe that data into Clay. It's just if you're getting started with a lot of this, it is easier to just take the Clay web snippet and install on your website and get website traffic there, or connect your Gmail to our sequencer and send emails through that. So there's an end-to-end bit that's easier, but for more advanced teams, I do see a lot of them use a mixture of tools, and we obviously support that. We're an ecosystem tool. And so the ability to basically, we call it our like people movement package, so job changers, new hires, promotions. Website intent is one of my favorite signals. I have lots of strategies for that, like fundraising, news about the company, things like that, and custom signals, which is you point ClayAgent at different websites, schedule it, and it goes out and checks for things or different bits of research. Those are the big. I hope my PMM team doesn't get after me. I think those are the kind of the big four signals, and those are all native in Clay now, and so you can put things together. The other thing that we've done here is, for a long time Clay users, they probably know the difficulty and pain of doing a lot of signals aggregation work in Clay and tables. So there's a new set of features in Clay called audiences, which allow you, first of all, to store like millions or tens of millions of records in Clay, which is the first time we're doing that. But also the key part of audiences is it allows you to then aggregate your signals and refresh them on those individual records. So if you have 1 million companies that you're tracking or 500,000 contacts that you're tracking, you have a more purpose-built piece of software and infrastructure behind it that allows you to do your signals aggregation work in a easier way. And we're just getting started with this. Audiences was announced at Sculpt, our conference, in the fall last year, and it's actually still in beta, but coming GA very soon. And it represents just a new kind of world for Clay in terms of like storing data in the tool and basically storing your TAM in Clay for the first time.
Gotcha. And when you start running the whole signal-based engine for Clay itself, you mentioned quite a lot of things, right? But what was the most actionable play? You mentioned the website visits, for instance, but here is a caveat in there, because the majority of people would say, oh yeah, these guys are ready to buy because they come to my website, which is a BS in my opinion. So what were some of the plays that worked before for you guys?
Yeah, so this reminds me of the signals that I missed, which is the first-party data. Clay is fortunate to have a PLG motion that involves people signing up for the product all the time, trying it, doing stuff in it. That is an incredibly amazing piece of signal if you have something like that for your business. And we support that in Clay as well. So that's probably the fifth type of signal that I should have mentioned. But so we have all that information stored in Snowflake. We were piping that into Clay. We were looking for basically people that were signing up for the tool. And then we know who our ICP is. We know it's growth stage tech companies. And these days we're branching out into more things, but let's just say for the sake of argument, at the time we were doing this, we're like, it's growth stage tech companies, it's ops users, marketing users. If there's a sales user and an ops user, or a marketing user and an ops user in the same workspace, so combination of first-party, third-party data to enrich those titles and where they are on the org, but know that they're both in the same workspace. That's a really good signal for us. So those types of programs were the ones that first really hit it for us. And then now we do all sorts of stuff. We do job changers, and we do a lot of like marketing work through website intent into LinkedIn ad audiences, which is a really good flow. Yep. But at the beginning, it was like first-party data, enriching it to understand what in this is our ICP, a little bit of usage data, a little bit of maybe enriching the company to see some deeper details about how they hired a new CRO with an AI mandate, stuff like that. And then, that was really the program at the beginning.
Awesome. Sweet. Yeah, it's a common POS playbook in that sense, right? Like you happen to land and expand further down the line, and then the SDRs just pick up the phone and whatnot. What would you say was your biggest mistake when it comes to designing the signal-based engine?
I think it's easy to let the messaging get out of control. We did realize at one point that we were sending pretty non-personalized messages at pretty high volumes to people because our techniques for limiting that on having visibility across emails that sales is sending and marketing is sending and the product is sending, like there was a lot going on there. And we actually got complaints about that too. And I feel comfortable saying this because many companies we talk to go through the same things. And so we've done a lot of work recently to not only personalize the messaging, but also do more detailed scoring around our accounts so that if it's a certain type of account that we are really focused on, we're going to do a little bit more human in the loop reviewed outreach and less messaging. If it's more of a mass market account, we'll still do more messaging, but we'll really make sure that the rate limiting around that is good. Yeah, I'd say that was probably a big set of learnings for us. It's easy to let these things get away from you at scale, and that's still an open problem within GTM engineering. I'd say like fully observing all these touch points.
Yeah, but it's also part of the whole A/B testing mindset, right? Like you just try something, you fail, you learn, you try again,
Yeah.
you reiterate, etc., etc. It's more for a learning rather than a mistake in your case, which is great. And okay, but let's say that one day you move away from Clay, right? It's a big question, but let's say that you're once again ahead of growth, because for the people that don't know, you were ahead of growth before. How would you design a signal-based go-to-market engine from scratch once again? What's the process like?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about some of these like AI SDR SDKs to put a lot of acronyms together. Like Browserbase has an AI SDR SDK. I forget what it might just be called exactly that. I forget what it's called. I think Vercel has something. There's a bunch of like agent builder toolkits. So that would be my starting point. That plus something like Supabase plus like a lovable interface to observe everything and have analytics and have click to send triggers, things like that. Notifications in Slack for sure, and then probably like some more like weekly performance summary type things. I think you could actually build a lot of that with these SDKs, maybe like vibe coded type of thing. Major problem with that, I know I know it's not supposed to use Clay, but you just need some data from somewhere. And so I'd still need something. And yeah, you'd have to really point a gun at my head to get me to not use Clay for this, but you still need a place to like really pull in a lot of data, even if it's agents doing a lot of work. You need an MCP connection to some data enrichment solution, things like that. Yeah, that's got to come from somewhere. But the other elements, the other pieces, that's how I would build it.
Gotcha. And when it comes to helping, because you mentioned that you guys actually do like a white glove type of experience, like you help actually your clients to do that. What are some of the mistakes that's like in-house teams do when it comes to building it for first time or adopting Clay?
There's a lot of alignment typically that has to happen. So like people have to agree on the types of messaging that we're sending. Marketing has to sign off. Sales leaders have to feel good about it. Reps have to feel good about it. Usually people under index on how much time it takes to get that kind of alignment, especially in larger orgs where there's maybe like very high level CMO level messaging initiatives that are happening. The other thing is not being able to connect everything, not having a Salesforce user ready, not having a Snowflake setup ready, like taking a lot of time to go through IT security type things to get all the data connected and not being prepared for that. Having like internal processes that need to be followed that we just discovered them for the first time while we were going through connecting all of this. I'm trying to think if there's like a third category of not so another one would be ICP definition. In some sense, Clay, for better or worse, it's a little bit of an exercise for these companies, but I think it's like eating your vegetables. It's good for you. Clay somewhat forces you to put your ICP definition and your messaging framework into software. So instead of it living in different people's heads and in documents and stuff, we're going to actually implement these two things in software in Clay. And so it's like, all right, what's defined as our ICP? There's different data points for that. Oh, actually, we'd like to do an exercise where we try a lot of data points and figure out which among those are the right ones to contribute. That might be a third category of things that take time before you can then build your signals program and say, all right, we can identify this count as our ICP. If we get a signal on them, we can send them a quality message, and we've got all the data connected that we need to be able to build those signals.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting that you mentioned the ICP, because this is something that I'm also keep on bringing up in my own calls when I happen to speak to different revenue officers. The first thing is always, okay, do you know your ICP? Because then you can really define the signals or the creative ways around the evergreen signals that we provide in order for you to push it to Clay and enrich further down the line. There is this educational piece that still needs to happen. There are so many teams out there that still do spraying and praying. And I'm sure that you also notice that with the amount of accounts that people source based on the usage. How do you educate actually your team as a revenue leader or even as a in-house GTM engineer to adopt the full signal movement? Because it is a thing, it is needed, but there's still a lot of resistance towards that because it feels uncomfortable.
Yeah. The good news about sellers is if something is working that is producing closed-won deals, usually you don't have to do a ton more convincing than that for the good sellers. Obviously, there are people set in their ways, whatever. They don't believe it's going to work. Okay, I don't know. Maybe I guess we can like argue about it. But at a certain level, it's like, hey, look, here's the way that we won these accounts and broke into these accounts. It involves signals like at many steps of this, and it involved our reps like following the thread of those signals, triggering things, clicking through, observing this. Like the signals program was a key part of us winning this deal. At that point, it's look, like, what are you going to say? So I think that is the approach that I take with different programs that we're doing. I want to see them work, right? And if they're not working, then my feedback to ops and marketing folks is I'm not going to bring this to the sellers because I don't have convincing data. I don't have signed DocuSigns as a result of this. So it's like, I'm not going to put that on my sellers. So that's really how I go about it. Obviously, not everything can be put in that framework. There's certain things that are just like inputs and hygiene that you can't draw as direct a line. But as much as possible, I try to say this program is going to help us increase the top line, and we're going to have success stories that we can talk about as a result of this program. And then if you have those things, I generally find that a lot of sellers will join the party.
Love it. All right. Because of time, I need to start wrapping it up. Last two questions, and they're a little bit more rapid ones. So first question, what is the top 3 advices that you can give to GTM teams when it comes to data quality?
At a very tactical level, most people could do a lot more domain cleaning. If you think about an enrichment pipeline, there's like an error that propagates throughout the pipeline that results in the end state like having a lower fill rate. In a normal enrichment pipeline, accounts, a list of accounts, domains, matching, hierarchies, firmographics, custom data points, contact searching, emails, phone numbers, LinkedIn's for the contacts, messaging, etc. So by the time you get to the end of that pipeline, if there were errors at the beginning that around the domain was incorrectly matched to the account or something, then that's how you end up with low fill rates on phones and emails at the end. And so as much as possible at every stage of that enrichment pipeline, if you can focus on the foundational domains, account hierarchies, some of that type of stuff, and keep that really clean, that's really going to help you get your end state quality phones and emails that you need and that sellers are going to use. And so people should spend more time there. Let's see, you need 2 more, right?
Yeah, quick ones.
Okay, quick ones. Okay, let's do this. Probably the next one is people don't regularly check their data quality. They're like, all right, let's make our data quality better. And then they don't put in place things which you can do in Clay, which allow you to regularly make updates to it, check the quality and so forth. And so they don't revisit it until something bad has happened again. And they're like, all right, we got to check on this again. So what you should do is in Clay, you can output the metadata of these waterfalls. You can output like which provider produced the phone number and which provider produced the revenue data point and so forth. And you should sync that back to some sort of metadata store, whether it's Salesforce or Snowflake or some other system, so that you can check in and say, okay, who's producing the highest quality data? And then in Clay, just go in and rearrange those waterfalls and make those updates. And the thing that a lot of people don't get is they're like, oh, what is Clay's view on data quality? It's like, we're actually putting that in your hands with the software. You have your own view of data quality in your company, what you care about. And we're giving you the tools to keep that up to date and switch out providers that aren't producing high quality data and so forth. But you need to track those analytics. And it's fair to say that maybe we should do that in our product, and maybe we will. So that's number 2. I realize these are not fast, but I have a little time, so I'll just keep.
That's fine.
Okay, number 3 is going to be feedback from the field. Your ideal situation is that if a seller hits a bad number, they call someone's mom, they are noting that. They're able to say, look, this number is bad, get me a new number. You can set these flows up relatively easily. You can add buttons to your Salesforce that talk to Clay, that fetch new data, that mark things as bad and so forth. And actually now in Clay, this is not available via API yet, which is a little sad, but you can go into Clay and any cell, you can right click and you can leave feedback on that cell. And that feedback goes to the data provider and allows them to improve the quality of their data set. And that feedback loop is actually a big selling point for data providers wanting to join Clay, because they can actually get a lot of really good feedback that helps their whole data set look better from kind of large user base. That would be number 3 for me, not capturing and having systems to get rapid feedback from the field and pass that feedback back to Clay and then get new data points as a result of that.
felt like I should have asked such nerdy questions from the beginning. Jesus
Oh, hey
Christ.
man,
We
yeah,
need
this
to-
is part of GTM engineering. This is what you get.
No, I love it. I love it. Maybe we can make a second part if people really like that
Sure,
because I want
absolutely.
to dive even more towards these things. Okay, and one last question just to wrap everything so nicely. What is an underrated advice that you can give to all the revenue leaders out there?
Oh man, I've met so many great revenue leaders and I'm earlier in this, so I would hesitate to give them too much advice. Maybe I can share some advice from some folks I really have admired. I talked at one point, hopefully she's okay with me sharing this, or she probably won't see this, but to the former like chief customer officer at Figma. And I was like, what are like some traps with kind of at that point Clay's customer facing sales team was much smaller, GTM engineering team was smaller. I was like, what are some traps with this? And she goes, not being able to evaluate who's really good and have a framework for that early enough. Because what happened to Clay is we had a big PLG motion, still do, and God bless, and we had a lot of inbound coming in. And when you are blessed with inbound and demand and so forth, it basically means that folks that aren't maybe the best sellers or best people with the product or customers can actually still do well. And it's only later when you have to shift more of your pipeline sources to be more outbound and so forth that you discover who's actually good and who's not. And so her advice was like, put a system in place as early as you can, even when things are going really well and there's lots of demand and the company is scaling, to allow you to really understand who's good and be able to do performance management. And I don't know. I don't know if I followed her advice to the T, but we tried to do more on that, and I thought it was a really good call out and not something I'd heard before. So yeah, I give her credit for that. I thought that was a really insightful bit.
Yeah, it is actually holy awesome. Everett, thank you very much for coming on the pod. Guys, once again, if you want to hear more actionable insights from Everett on my first signal, do leave a comment or let me know. I'm sure that we can make some sick things together. And without any further ado, Everett, thanks again and good luck with the rest of the week, man.
Hey, thanks so much. This was fun.